For millions of television viewers, Frank Sutton was Sergeant Vince Carter, the quintessential image of a tough military man on screen. He delivered refreshing laughter and memorable moments in Gomer Pyle U.S.M.C. But few knew that behind that neat uniform was a real veteran carrying untold stories and deep war wounds. Today, we will explore the silent aftermath that Frank Sutton had to endure, unveiling the secrets of a man who not only lived fully on screen, but also fought fiercely on the real-life battlefield. A brilliant acting career. Frank Spencer Sutton, born October 23, 1923, died June 28, 1974, was one of the most veteran and beloved actors on American television. From a young age, Frank Sutton showed a burning passion for the stage. He graduated from East Nashville High School in 1941 and quickly demonstrated his talent in local plays, steadily building a strong foundation for his later career. Sutton's acting career began to take off after World War II as he gradually made a name for himself in theater, television, and film. In the early 1950s, he appeared regularly on television shows like Tom Corbett's Space Cadet and The Goldbergs. His significant breakthrough came in 1955 with a supporting role in the Academy Award-winning film Marty. From then on, he continuously appeared in many other notable films such as Four Boys and a Gun, 1957, Town Without Pity, 1961, and The Satan Bug, 1965. The small screen was also where he shined with guest roles in popular series like The Twilight Zone, the episode The Dummy, Route 66, Naked City, The Fugitive, and Gunsmoke throughout the 1950s and early 60s. However, the role that truly elevated Frank Sutton to stardom and made him an icon in the hearts of American audiences was gunnery Sergeant Vince Carter in the sitcom Gomer Pyle U.S.M.C., 1964 to 1969. Starting as a pilot episode in The Andy Griffith Show, the comedic contrast between Sergeant Carter's strict, short-tempered personality and the innocent, kind-hearted Gomer Pyle, played by Jim Nabors, won over audiences. Throughout 5 seasons, Sutton excellently portrayed the role of a tough military instructor who secretly harbored deep care, making Sergeant Carter one of the most memorable figures on American television. Audiences loved Sergeant Carter for his authenticity, strength, and sometimes a bit of his suffering when dealing with Gomer. A proud military journey. However, what few people know about Frank Sutton, who so brilliantly portrayed a Marine Corps officer, is that he actually had a period of arduous and harsh military service in real life. When World War II broke out, Frank Sutton's life took a different turn. At 19, with patriotism and a will to serve, he volunteered to join the U.S. Army in 1943, putting aside a promising acting dream. Although he initially wanted to join the Marines but was rejected due to color blindness, Sutton was still determined to serve his country. During his time in the military, Sutton underwent rigorous training and quickly proved his capabilities. He was deployed to the European front, where the war was at its fiercest. Sutton was part of the 9th Infantry Division, one of the U.S. Army's most legendary and seasoned combat units in World War II. This division participated in many key campaigns, from landings in North Africa and Sicily to bloody battles in France, Belgium, and finally, the advance into Nazi Germany. Frank Sutton is known to have participated in 14 assault landings, an astonishing number, including fierce battles in Leyte, Luzon, Bataan, and Corregidor. It was on these hot battlefields that he had to face the brutal reality of war, the deafening sound of bombs and gunfire, the loss of comrades and haunting, horrific sights. Each day spent on the battlefield was a struggle for survival, demanding courage, resilience, and an iron will. When the war ended, Frank Sutton was discharged in 1946 with the rank of sergeant, a rank that attested to his extensive combat experience, leadership skills, and dedication. These years in the military not only forged Sutton into a brave soldier, but also deeply imprinted on his soul, shaping him into a person with depth and experience that would later unconsciously influence how he portrayed Sergeant Vince Carter. A fateful role that, despite its comedic nature, contained a surprisingly authentic part of his own military life. Frank Sutton's silent war wound. While his role as Sergeant Carter brought laughter and entertainment, Frank Sutton's real life held a tragic chapter that few knew about: deep war wounds, both physical and mental. Though he returned from the battlefield as a sergeant, his years facing life and death never truly left him. Frank Sutton endured 14 assault landings, an astonishing number, and this came at no small price. Throughout his service on the European front, he repeatedly faced imminent danger. Although there is no publicly detailed information about a specific event that caused severe injury participating in fierce campaigns with the 9th Infantry Division, a unit often on the front lines, almost guarantees that he suffered repeated concussions and physical impacts. Many veterans from his era who engaged in intense combat often faced long-term health issues such as mild traumatic brain injury, concussions from close-range explosions, hearing damage from prolonged gunfire, and explosions or potential internal injuries from strong impacts. Even if outwardly he appeared unharmed, these invisible wounds could cause chronic pain, physical function decline, and other complex health problems later in life. However, perhaps even heavier were the psychological wounds that war left in Frank Sutton's mind. Like millions of other veterans, he likely dealt with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Witnessing death, destruction, and living in constant fear etched itself deep into his subconscious. Though he never publicly spoke about his PTSD, close friends and family may have noticed changes in him. Symptoms of PTSD can include recurring nightmares, flashbacks of horrific scenes on the battlefield, sudden anxiety and panic, persistent insomnia and irritability, or a quick temper. For an actor, these pressures could become even more severe. There is speculation that the characteristic irritability and bluntness of his Sergeant Carter role, which he portrayed so brilliantly, might partly reflect the internal struggles he was experiencing in real life. These lingering effects not only affected his health, but also deeply impacted Frank Sutton's personal life. Reintegrating into civilian society after experiencing extreme wartime events is often a major challenge. He may have struggled with feelings of alienation, difficulty forming normal social relationships, and constantly carried the burden of the past. Despite being a talented and beloved public figure behind the spotlight, Frank Sutton may have faced his own silent battles that only those who have lived through the nightmares of war can truly understand. These wounds, though invisible, became an inseparable part of him until the end of his life. Frank Sutton, an unrevealed face. Frank Sutton was incredibly successful in embodying Sergeant Vince Carter, a stoic Marine Corps officer, sometimes hot-tempered but always dedicated to his men. But did his iconic on-screen image truly reflect the real man, especially what he experienced in the military? The truth is, there were surprisingly striking similarities, but also profound differences. On screen, Sergeant Carter was the embodiment of military discipline, tough, principled, always striving to mold the naive Private Gomer Pyle into an exemplary soldier. His bluntness, his trademark Gomer shouts, and Carter's scowling expressions became legendary. It's remarkable that Frank Sutton portrayed all of this with such authenticity, making audiences believe he was indeed a military officer in real life. It's not hard to see that his years serving in the Army as a sergeant provided Sutton with a wealth of experience and a deep understanding of the military environment. He knew well the feeling of following orders, the pressure of responsibility, and the special relationship between officers and enlisted men. This helped him perform the role naturally, from his posture and voice to his very soldier-like reactions. Carter's discipline and seriousness were undoubtedly drawn from what Sutton himself absorbed in the military. Some critics and viewers even suggested that Sergeant Carter's sometimes excessive irritability might have been an unconscious way for Frank Sutton to release the stress and anxiety from the mental wounds he faced. The role served as a release valve for the pressures accumulated from wartime. However, alongside the similarities in discipline and understanding of the military environment, Frank Sutton's real life contained struggles that a comedic role couldn't fully convey. Sergeant Carter, though sometimes annoying, was still a humorous character, often provoked adorably by Gomer. But in real life, Sutton's war wounds, especially PTSD and physical sequelae, were anything but humorous. They were real burdens capable of causing pain isolation and silent internal battles. The role brought him fame and a career, but it couldn't heal the mental scars from the battlefield. The impact of unveiling these secrets, revealing information about Frank Sutton's military past and his wounds, is profoundly significant. First, it helps us understand the real Frank Sutton more clearly. A talented actor, but also a veteran who made silent sacrifices. It adds another layer of depth to his image, transforming him from a mere comedic icon into a complex individual with an admirable and pitiable past. Second, Sutton's story raises public awareness about the invisible lasting effects that veterans endure. When a famous star like him also struggled with the consequences of war, it helps break down stigmas and encourages empathy for returning soldiers. Finally, it's a powerful reminder of the true cost of war, not just what happens on the battlefield, but also the lifelong impacts on those who participated. Frank Sutton, through his portrayal of Sergeant Carter and his real-life journey, has become a symbol of the resilience and courage of American soldiers. Unveiling these hidden scars not only helps us view the real Frank Sutton more comprehensively. A talented actor, a father, a husband, and above all, a soldier who sacrificed silently. His story opens a door to raise community awareness about the invisible burden that millions of veterans carry. It reminds us that behind every uniform, every medal, every seasoned face is a human being with their own story, with ongoing battles against PTSD, chronic pain, and difficulties reintegrating. Frank Sutton lived with these burdens until the end of his life, when he passed away in 1974 at the age of 50 from a heart attack. A cruel end that many believe was linked to years of accumulated mental and physical stress. His death, though early, closed a life full of dedication and hardship. Looking back at Frank Sutton's life, we can't help but contemplate human resilience and the true price of peace. It's a tribute to a generation that generously gave their lives for their country, and a call for empathy, gratitude, and continuous support for veterans who are living with the aftermath of war. They are silent heroes, and each of their stories is a valuable lesson in sacrifice. After listening to Frank Sutton's story, what are your feelings about the silent sacrifices of veterans? Do you know anyone who has experienced similar things? Please share your thoughts and stories in the comments section below. And if you wish to continue exploring more inspiring and meaningful stories about great figures and historical events, don't forget to follow our YouTube channel so you don't miss upcoming content.